Hello class, in this video we're going to continue expanding our knowledge of Microsoft Access. The main part of this module, there's some other things as well, but the main part is trying to learn how to do more advanced querying of your database. I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in here. The first thing is we're going to create queries in design view. So last time in the first part of the module, we were just doing queries using the query wizard. And while that's great, it's fairly limited in its capabilities. When you create queries in design view, you have a lot more control over exactly what you want that query to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and create a query. This is the database that you'll be utilizing for your textbook projects this week. So a lot of this will look familiar. You can see I've got my tables on the left edge here. In the next section, I've got a whole bunch of queries. These are the things that we're creating today. You continue down, there's different categories here. There's some forms and reports. All of these things are grouped by their category or object type. So I want to create a query off of the account table. To do that, I'm just going to click on the account table to select it. And then I'm going to go up to my Create tab, and I'm going to choose Create Query Design. So instead of choosing Query Wizard, I'm going to choose Query Design. And it's going to take me into the Query Design view. And the first thing it's asking me here with this window is which tables do I want to include in the query? So if I want any results from a table, I have to have that table as part of the query. I'm going to go ahead and just pull in the account table here because that's the one I want to work with. So I highlight it and I hit Add. And then I have to close this window once I'm done with it. And you can see here in my work area, I now have the account table listed, as well as all of the fields that are part of the account table. So you can see there's account number, account name, street, city, state, postal code, etc. Usually you can resize these. I'm not sure. There we go. The mouse didn't want to work for me there. So you can see that I can resize it so I can see all of the different fields. So as of right now, I don't actually have anything in my query. I just have the ability to access this table as part of my query. So to include fields in my query, which is essentially to get them to show up in my results, I need to double click on them up here, and then you're going to see them start showing up on this bottom part of the window. So if I just want to, let's say, include account name, and let's say city and state in my query. I've got an extra one there. Let me get rid of that. You can see down here in the bottom, I now have field account name, I now have city, and I now have state. If I run this, it's going to return those three columns from that table, and those three fields from that table, and all of the records within those three fields. So I get the entire table, but I only get selected fields from the table. That's probably the simplest kind of query you can design, where you just say, I don't want to see every column in the table, or I don't want to see every field in the table. I just want to see specific fields. So continuing on, I can actually use criterion in my queries. I mean, a query is great and all, but if you're not limiting it down to specific records, then you are not going to be having detail in your query. So I'm going to just continue to edit that query that we've already run to limit based on some specific text in my result. So I'm going to go back to my query. Right now it's in view mode, and I'm just going to say I only want to see records that have a city of, let's say, Granger. So I'll get just Granger in my result. I'm going to take this query back into design view by, again, clicking on the triangle with the pencil and the ruler. And down here in the area where I see the included fields in my query, I'm going to go under the criteria section, and in the criteria row under city, I'm going to add a criteria of Granger. And you can see that I did not put those quotes around it. Microsoft Access did that on my behalf. The quotes just designate that it's text. When I have that criteria in there and I go to run this, you're going to see that instead of getting all of the records on the table for those specific fields, I only get the records that have a city that equals Granger. All right. So that's, again, a simple way to limit the records that return. I can also use wildcards. So I took the entire city field, Granger in that case, and I typed that into my criteria. I can just put in a portion of that and then include what's called a wildcard character, which for Microsoft Access is a star, to designate that I want any characters, any number of characters within that section of my result. And I'll show that because it's easier to show than just to say. Again, same query. I'm going to take it back into design view. And here I have Granger. Instead of Granger, I'm just going to go ahead and put D star. And that just means I want any record that has a city that starts with the letter D, because it's the beginning of the criteria, and then any number of characters from 0 to many after that. So if I do that, again, it edits my typing, so it puts a like in there for me and then puts it in quotes. When I run this, I'm going to get any city that starts with the letter D. Now, I could have also, let me just take this criteria out, run it again. Let's say I wanted anything, and maybe this doesn't make any sense, but let's just say I want any record that contains the letter A somewhere. If I go and back into design view and I put in star A star, that means any record that has any number of characters and then an A and then any number of characters after that from 0 to many. So if I do that and I run it again, you can see that I'm going to get a bunch of records back because any record that has the letter A in the city field will get returned. I just wanted to show you that so you can see that you can use multiple wildcards. You don't have to limit yourself to a single wildcard. Okay, you can also query on fields that are not actually in the result that you want to see. Perhaps you don't care to see the city for the account number, but you only want to show the records for a specific city. You can do that just by adding that field into the design view work area down here at the bottom. But instead of where it says show with the checkbox, you can just uncheck it. And then I'm going to get rid of my criteria here. And I'm going to put a state of Illinois, because I only want to see my accounts in Illinois, but I don't really need it to say Illinois. So when I run this, you're going to see that the state field is not there. However, the results are being filtered to only show ones that match the state of Illinois. I can use a parameter query. These can be really useful if you have a setup query that you need to run repeatedly, but the actual criterion in that query changes each time. It's a fairly common thing. It's kind of like a runtime parameter. So I'm just going to do exactly what they're doing in the presentation here. I'm going to create a query on the city, but I'm going to type in the city each time I run my query. So I'm going to go back into design view again. I'm going to make the state field show again just because. And then I am going to, in my criteria section for city, this time I'm going to put bracket, and then I'm going to type enter a city, and then end bracket. And what this is doing is this is going to, whenever I run this query, it's going to put this on the screen, prompting the user of the query for what to put in, and then the user will type in what they want. So if I run this now, you're going to see it's saying, hey, enter a city. Sure, I'll enter in Davidson. And then I hit OK, and it'll run the query for just the city of Davidson. However, if I wanted to instead run it again, but this time I only want it to be, I'm not going to be able to think, a Granger, I think was one of the other ones. If I type in Granger and hit OK, I get just Granger results. So I can keep using this query, but slightly different each time depending on which city I want to type in when I run it. So that's what a parameter query gives you. You don't have to directly put in values. If you're working with numbers and dates, you can create ranges. using any kind of normal comparison operator. So here they're showing they're doing a query on the account manager table where they are saying a date after a specific date. I could, let me see here. I'm going to do it on the account table still. I'm going to say I want to know who is currently owing me more than $2,000. So I'm going to go back to my query. First of all, I'm going to add a few more fields to my query so I can see the amount due. So I'm going to put current due in there. And then I'm going to add a criterion that says greater than 2,000. So it's going to return any record that owes me more than $2,000. I'm going to take my parameter query off of my city field. And now when I run this, I'm only going to get records back that owe me more than $2,000. So it's allowing me to create a parameter on a range of numbers. I can use what's called compound queries or criterion, and what that means is I can utilize the and or fields to do multiple queries or more complex queries. So if I'm looking again, I'm just going to continue working with the same query. If I take this back into design view, maybe, there we go. You can see down here, you may have already noticed it, there's the criteria field, and below that there's one that says or. So the or lets me say, let's say for instance, I want to see any record where the city is either Davidson or the current due is greater than $2,500. So this is going to return any record that matches City of Davidson, and it's also going to return any record that has a greater current due of $2,500. It is an OR criteria. So if either of these criterion match, it's going to return the record. So I'm going to get a whole bunch of them here, I'm sure. So you can see Davidson's there all over the place. Even ones where Davidson is the city, but the current due is not $2,500. And I'm also getting ones where the current due is more than $2,500, but the city is not Davidson. So it's an OR criteria. If I then take that back into design view, I'm going to have to adjust it a little bit. I'm going to say Davidson, and I want to know which accounts in Davidson owe me less than $1,300, to be very specific in this case. Instead of putting it down in the OR section, I'm going to move it up into the criteria and say less than 1,300. When I do this on the same line like this is called an AND query. So I am going to say, give me any records where the city is Davidson and the current due is less than $1,300. It has to meet both of those criteria to get returned as a result. So when I run this, I just get that one record where the current due is less than $1,300 and the city is Davidson. So those are compound criterion. I can clear the design grid. I mean, if you want to, you can do this. I don't know how important it is, but it's good to know, I guess. If I go into design view, you actually saw me do it earlier this time around when I removed a field. If I wanted to get rid of all the fields, or any of the fields for that matter, this little gray bar, horizontal bar here at the very top, when I put my cursor in the right spot, you see it turns into like a downward arrow. If I click on that, the entire column turns black, and then I can just hit my delete key on my keyboard and it disappears. So if I want to get rid of everything here, I can just click here and hold down my mouse and drag across, highlight everything, hit delete. So now I've cleared my view. I can use sorts in my query. So I may want to return specific records and in a specific order. So let's see here. I'm going to work with the same query now that I've cleared it, of course. I'm going to do account name, postal code, current due, and account manager. So very similar as what I did before. However, I want to see at the top of my results the accounts that owe me the most money, because those are the most important ones. Let's say I'm making phone calls or something to my customers saying, hey, you owe me money. I'm going to start with one that owes me the most money to make sure I get them first. So you can see here, again, down in this area, there's a row called sort. If I go to the current due field and I click first and I get this down arrow, I can choose descending. And now when I run this query, you're going to see that the results are current due from highest to lowest. So if I'm again making phone calls, I'm going to hit up Avondale Community Bank first. I can omit duplicates. This is a little bit harder to show because I don't really have any duplicate records in here, but I can omit them in my query results. So let's say I had a table that had repeats of the same thing. I can just return one instead of multiples. So I need to go into my query in design view. And I have to go over here. It's kind of a weird thing you have to do. I have to go over here in an empty spot and go to properties. And then I get this property sheet over here on the right. And I can say, there's a lot of things you can do in here, but specifically I can say unique records, and I can change that from no to yes. And that means if there are two identical records in the result, it only shows once. I can also sort on multiple keys, pretty similar to sorting on a single one. However, just know that it will sort from left to right. So maybe I want to know the account, I want to know the current due, and I want to, let me throw city in here. Put city right here. You can see I'm moving these around. I'm going to attempt to move these around. There we go. So I've got city. I want to see for each city, I want to look at the current due descending so I can see who owes me the most in each city. I'm going to go to the city field and choose descending or ascending because it doesn't really matter. I'll choose ascending. So what it'll do is it will first sort the results by city, and then it will sort within those cities by current due. So when I run this, you can see that the city column is sorted, and then within each one of the cities, the current due is also sorted descending. So you can see for Davidson, there's 1875 and 1280. So it's sorted at first by city and then by current due. There's a couple of ways if I wanted to sort it the other way around, but show it this way. First of all, if I wanted to just see current due, I could just move current due to the left of city, but sometimes that doesn't make sense because you want to see things in a specific order. You can actually kind of mess with it a little bit here. If I wanted to, let's say, sort first by current due, and then by city, which really wouldn't make sense. You can actually put two copies of the same field into the results. So if I go ahead and put, let's see, if I put city in again, there we go, but then don't show it in my results. Oops, now I ended up with two of them because I was impatient. But don't show my results. I could then not sort it here. I could sort it here, and then it will continue to follow that same rule where it'll first sort by current due, and then it'll sort by city, even though city is to the left of current due. It's kind of a corner case, but people run across it. You can't really see it here because all of the current dues are different numbers, but it is first sorted by, I accidentally hid my other city field. There we go. It is first sorted by current due, and then it is sorted by city. Nope, I left my sort here, that's why. Try that one more time. Run it again. There, now it's first sorted by current due and then by city. So. Okay, so that's that. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing in there. A top values query. You can only return the top values if you, let's say, you had a really big table and you only wanted to see the top 10. This is a perfect example, and maybe I only want to see the top 10 people that owe me the most money. So I can just limit my return to a specific number of records. So if I take my same query back into design view, I'd first get it in the sort order that I want, and then instead of up here where it says return all, I can say return, these are pre-built in ones, but you can type any number in here. If I just wanted to return the top 10, I just type 10 in here, and then when I run it, I'm only going to get 10 records. No matter how many records met the criteria or were in the table, you only get the first 10 that would have shown up in the result.